Ya Palingana. This is our place. Our ancestors have been here since the beginning of time. We come from this country. We are a part of it, not outside of it. Our responsibility is to maintain the balance of relational ecosystems that we all live in. We are country, seas and waterways. Some call me water. Nearly all need me. I touch everything, connecting the inanimate with living things that without me would not be. For in all of the arteries and all of the veins, I am the flow of life. We are country. Country is us.
Welcome, welcome, and thank you to Uncle Jack and the theatre for that lovely recording, and also to our beautiful set designers that have produced these gorgeous plants here for us to feel very at home as Enviro women and all of those that work around us. I'm Kath Tuft. I'm the CEO at the Tasmanian Land Conservancy, and this is the 7th year that we've partnered with Enviro-Dynamics to deliver an event that celebrates all of the amazing women that do work all through the conservation space in Tassie and beyond. Today we have a wonderful topic around women working with conservation dogs, because this collaboration with our canine friends gives us something amazing that we can't do on our own. So I'm really looking forward to hearing all of the different ways that dogs help us do our work in protecting nature. This is also the first year that we have streamed, so a big hello to those of you online, including some people that are tuning in from Davis Station in Antarctica. So welcome, thanks for joining us. It's pretty special to have you part of this. A little bit of housekeeping, please turn off your phone if you haven't already so that we can all focus. And I would love to welcome up Magali Wright, who is one of the super trio of directors at Enviro-Dynamics, who will be leading the panel today with our wonderful dog handlers to tell our fantastic stories. So Magali does amazing work with orchids in Tasmania, and we'll hear a little bit about that and how dogs are supporting that work. So please come on up, Magali, and welcome her.
Thanks very much, Kath. As Kath mentioned, I'm a director and a principal consultant at Enviro-Dynamics. And I've been lucky enough to work on 2 projects with conservation dogs. One with our gorgeous little Pippa, who some of you probably have met today, who has been trained by Mo McPherson to detect Phytophthora root rot under the mentorship of Ryan Tate. And I've also been working with Lynn, who is part of our panel tonight, and her gorgeous Cocker Spaniel called Mickey, who I hope you'll get to see some pictures of. He's the tri-coloured Cocker Spaniel looking at the orchids. So he's been trained to detect leek orchids that are endemic to the Tasmanian Midlands. And it's been really amazing to watch how conservation detection dogs can help with some of these things that are really hard for us to find and see. And I just also wanted to mention that both of these projects were ideas of our late and great and very missed Melanie J. Kelly, so part of her working legacy. I wanted to set the scene a little bit before inviting up the rest of the panel. So working with conservation detection dogs, they are trained to find biological targets using their highly developed sense of smell. It's a really interesting field in that it's becoming a lot more mainstream. However, it is quite new and relatively very new, and I am actually trying to remember it all rather than read it, and that's my problem, isn't it? So I just leave that all behind. Anyway, so I think the thing is there's no formal training pathway. So people learn about it in a similar way to Mo, where they're mentored by someone who is experienced in the field. And it is also, people have a mix of skills. They often come to it with a conservation, ecology, biosecurity or an invasive species background, but they also need that dog training and animal behaviour background as well. So we're going to hear a bit about the pathways that our amazing panel have taken to start working with dogs. It does take a big commitment. The dogs can't be put in a cupboard like a GPS. They need a house and ongoing care and lots of cuddles so that they know that they're loved and safe. And also training to a new scent can take quite a long time, anywhere between 12 and 18 months and sometimes even longer. And I am still trying to remember everything. And also, they often need to collaborate with species experts too, because particularly with things like Phytophthora and orchids that are really hard to see, that you need to be working with people that know what the signs and what these things look like. So it is a real game changer for a lot of conservation problems. However, it's not a silver bullet. So it works really well for cryptic species, things that are in quite low densities, but there are other questions that it isn't the best solution for, particularly if there's a real high odour load so that the dogs find it hard to distinguish, but also in environments where they're not safe for dogs. So it doesn't work for every situation. So I am absolutely going to have to read when I introduce because they've all done such fabulous things that I'm not going to remember them all. So I'd really like to welcome Sue Robinson up to sit with me. Sue is an invasive species biologist with Biosecurity Tasmania. Her focus is mostly island restoration, vertebrate pest eradication programs on large remote islands such as Macquarie Island. And she'll talk to us a bit more about some of the other islands. And detection dogs have been central to her work for the last 2 decades, and she currently leads pest and weed eradication efforts on seabird islands on the eastern Bass Strait. So can you join me in welcoming Sue? And next I'd like to welcome up Lynn Baker. Lynn brings more than 40 years experience in ecology and threatened species conservation, and for more than a decade she has specialised in detection dog surveys and research, working across multiple states with both threatened and invasive species through her former role with the New South Wales Government and with Canines for Wildlife. You can join me. And next up I'd like to welcome Nicole Gill. Nicole is a field ecologist and a conservation detection dog handler working with her dogs to support environmental research and monitoring. With a background in botany and invasive species management, she has also completed a master's research project investigating the use of dogs to help conserve Tasmanian masked owls, and she's the current president of the Australasian Conservation Dog Network. And last but not least, I'd like to welcome Melissa Houghton. Melissa works as an invasive species in management and biosecurity and is now a diagnostic entomologist with the Tasmanian Government. Her career has included both frontline detection dog work on Macquarie Island, contributing to a major pest eradication efforts in challenging island environments. Welcome, Melissa. So we're pretty lucky tonight, aren't we? I really want to understand a little bit more about what brought you guys to work with conservation dogs. So I was just wondering if Sue could kick us off by describing the pathway you took to working with conservation dogs.
Thanks, Magali. Yes, I've spent a lot of time at Macquarie Island, and my start in conservation has been seabirds. I've been passionate about seabirds all my life, and ended up at Macquarie Island working on seabirds and seals. That coincided with the cat eradication program. So we're talking the late 90s, it was a bit of a while ago. And I got involved in that even while I was there as a biologist working on seals with the cat program. And as that developed through a few years, there became the need for two detection dogs to be used on that program, and they came from New Zealand. There wasn't a lot of options, or there wasn't a lot of use of dogs, of conservation dogs in Australia, like in the late 90s, but they were very popular in New Zealand. New Zealand has been working with conservation dogs for at least 50 years, so they're way ahead of Australia. So two came from there, Kim and Tua. And in 2002, I took over as the dog handler. So whilst I had very little dog handling experience, I knew the island very well, and I had a 1-month changeover with the dog handler. And so I worked with those dogs for a year, looking for any remaining cat sign or cat scats, and I brought them home to Australia after a year, and then they went on to do various other bits of work before they both passed away. But from that, I got involved with the New Zealand Dog Department of Conservation and their predator dog program. They have threatened species dogs and what they call predator dogs, which is ones that look for cats, rats, mice, rabbits, weasels, hedgehogs, all the invasive mammals. And so that was my start, was going to New Zealand every year or two to what's called a dog hui, which is a meeting of dog handlers. And that was my start, and that's where I learnt how to handle dogs, and I made some really good friends. I've had my original dog came from, well, not the Macquarie ones. My first one that I bought, a terrier, she came from there. So that was my start. Yeah.
Thanks, Sue. Would you like? Oh, you've got one.
That's a fascinating story, Sue. Yeah, look, somewhat similar to Sue. I had a background as an ecologist looking at threatened species around Australia, and when I was in the New South Wales government, I was a species coordinator for a cryptic little bird called the eastern bristlebird, which is in the northern population had dropped down to about 38 individual birds left in the wild in the early 2000s. And we had a really wicked problem. And my manager had said to me, "You're not allowed to let this bird go extinct on your watch." And I went, "Oh, thanks, that's really terrific, no pressure." So it called for a bit of innovation, and I went, "Well, what are we going to do?" And we knew what we needed to do in terms of the habitat side of management, and we were getting that in place. But the birds were in such dire strait, and they really challenging little birds, and they live in these little isolated pockets, so they're not getting together and doing what they needed to do. So we needed to bolster the numbers, which meant kick-starting a captive breeding program that had become defunct and was down to just 2 little birds sitting alone in some cages in Queensland. The problem was that no one could find the nests of these birds because they're incredibly cryptic. And they're these little tiny little brown birds that love living on the ground, and not that easy to find their nests because they're really, really well hidden. So the recovery team, we sort of put our heads together and we went, what's something we could do? And somebody said, "Well, what about a dog?" And I went, "Oh, now that's a good idea," being a bit of a dog person. So we did. So we got trained up to handle the dog, and we got a dog called Penny, who was a 6-month-old English Springer Spaniel, very opinionated young lady, and and she came on board, and we trained her up to find bristlebirds and the nests using feathers and scat material and things. And then we took her out for her first training run and into a little territory where they hadn't heard the male bird for 14 years, and she found it in 5 minutes. And there's actually a little YouTube clip you can find that sort of where the ecologist is just going, "What? How did she do that?" So that was the beginning of her career, and we worked with her in the field, and she had a few handlers that worked with her. But she managed to find 2 nests with eggs and chicks in them, which came into the captive breeding program and kick-started that captive breeding program, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But I was hooked. As a solution to a wicked problem, it showed us a completely different way of thinking about how to manage really tricky issues, and yeah, and I've been doing it ever since.
In some ways, my path was a little bit similar to Sue and Lynn's. Last millennium, I started my science degree at UTAS, and I studied zoology, but I also studied plant science and geography and environmental studies, and then I was offered an honours by Professor Jamie Kirkpatrick, which was about weeds on beaches, and I thought, great, I can go to the beach. I got my honours, and then I went on to work in weeds, mostly for NGOs and various levels of government, and eventually I washed up on the shores of the invasive species branch, which is now part of Biosecurity Tasmania. But while I was there, I was working on weeds, I was working on serrated tussock, and I met Sue Robinson. I met Sue Robinson by reputation first, because it's like, oh yeah, she does really cool shit with dogs, pardon my language, on islands, and doesn't like cats, one step off the front porch is feral. I'm like, she sounds cool, I want to meet her. And because we both worked on invasive species, sometimes we would get to go to islands to look. I'd look for weeds and she would look for cats or rabbits or whatever we were looking for. I'm like, this is amazing, Sue, can you take me on field trips? And Sue felt sorry for me, and I went and would volunteer with her on various projects, first in Tassie, and then we went all over Australia, did some really cool stuff. Also at this time, I did my first training course. I learned how to clicker train chickens, which sounds ridiculous, but like unlike dogs, like chickens are really hard to train because they don't love you. It's like they have no interest in pleasing you, and if you scare them, they will fly away. So it was great. I also, at that time, wrote a book because I got excited about the work that Sue was doing. I'm like, we're going to write a book about animals that help people solve environmental problems. And I went all over Australia and New Zealand. I went to a hui with Sue in New Zealand, which was great. And I went out with a bunch of different conservation dog handlers and watched them work, interviewed them, wrote a book about it, which was heaps of fun. Also at this time, the Australasian Conservation Dog Network just started to form, so a whole bunch of people who were working in the field thought it would be really good if we got together and tried to make sure that this field of science is like solid and good for dogs and good for the environment. But I was working on serrated tussock, and my friend Mel Kelly and I were like, we should get a dog that can find weeds. And no one was doing this in Australia at this time. And I went to the head botanist. I'm like, we should get a dog that can find serrated tussock. And the botanist was like, I don't think dogs can do that. And we were like, yes, they can. Mel got Fonzie, and about 9 months later, I got my first dog. So we were training Fonzie and, doing all of the training for him. And then I got Zorro, and on the advice of her trainer, he wanted me to get a spaniel because spaniel. And I was like, I want a border collie. And so I got a Sprolly from Gumtree. And we aptitude tested the whole litter, and Zorro tested really well, and I took him home, and we stopped. This is the first day we had him, stopped on the way home, and in the car park of the Salad Bowl, which I'm sure any Hobartians will be familiar with, I ran into my friend Dr Dejan Stojanovic, who is a parrot expert. And because Hobart is Hobart, he's like, oh, dog's disgusting, so furry, not birds. But do you think we could train it to find masked owl spew? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, maybe. And he's like, do you want to do a master's? I'm like, okay. And so my weed dog became a owl spew detection dog. So I worked with Adam Cisterni, who was looking at masked owls as part of a broader PhD project, which was great. And during that period, I also started working at a wind farm with Zorro, so he went on to and still works at a wind farm looking for dead birds and bats, doing mortality monitoring, and over time, I just picked up dogs and worked on other things.
Hi. So I think I was doing various things, and my entry was basically I saw footage of Macquarie Island. I was like, I've got to get there. And so I applied for every job that was going there, and they would have all gone on the dust on the pile. But I even started an environmental management degree because I thought, okay, well, I can see that's on all these applications, I'll start that. And then this job came up when the Macquarie Island Pest Eradication Project started, which was for dog handling. I was like, oh my God, I'm actually vaguely qualified for this job because I've been working remotely, doing really arduous work in Canada previously, which was, it was an interesting, because it was such a large project and it needed a lot of handlers. You know, they had a lot of dogs that were, basically the dogs were trained and then the handlers had to be trained for the dogs. It was a different scenario. So they happened to need a lot of dog handlers, and I had experience. I'd just been living on a property in Tasmania all my life and had used dogs. We had a sheep farm and then a vineyard, and we had used dogs just to hunt rabbits basically, which was a good entry for that job. It was a rabbit eradication program. And so that program was baiting first and for the rodents, and then it was expected that a proportion of the rabbits would not take the bait. And so when they were advertising for the job, it was 6 handlers and 6 hunters, and then we would just hunt the last remaining, they thought, 5,000 rabbits out of existence, which, and this is quite a long story, but it turned out that when we finally arrived there, they'd released Khaleesi. They thought maybe there was 30 rabbits, and then when I first saw the island, I thought, shit. Because it was covered in snow at the time, and there was apparently 30 rabbits left on this huge island that was really rugged. And, you know, I was not a professional dog handler. We'd gone through Steve Austin, who a lot of people have been involved with, who he trained a lot of the dogs, not all of them, but we went through a training program with him, and we were all paired with 2 dogs each. There was 12 dogs, 6 handlers, and we were paired by personality for these dogs. So we were trained for the dogs, which was really interesting. And yeah, so then I spent a year on this island, and we found 13 rabbits in 4.5 months, and that was it. We didn't know it at the time. But yeah, I've been dreaming of working with dogs ever since. But yeah, it was a pretty amazing experience, so yeah.
So Melissa, sorry, I just wondered, what's the process of pairing dogs and people together by personality?
Is it to do with star signs?
I wish. No, I don't, because there was 5 labs and 7 springers and 1 terrier. And they all had kind of different roles because they were so the springers are very popular, but you know they might cover a lot of ground, but perhaps not so thoroughly. But the Labradors were, you know, perhaps more thorough and maybe a bit more smarter. I don't know, but so they. No, I mean, so they paired, yeah, so for example, I was talking to someone earlier about Ash, who was on the island, and Bondi, who were 2 springers who were quite shy, and they were paired with Sandy King from Stewart Island, who's just really level-headed, calm, lovely person who could coach them through, you know, to work very well with her personality. They worked really well, and yeah, I got paired with a complete joker, so I don't know what that means. But, you know, Tama, the little terrier who had a lot of attitude, he was paired with a really experienced dog handler, and he took him through the ringer because, you know, you'd be working with Gary, and Tama very quickly worked out there was no rabbits on this island, so he would just, like, hide under a tussock. And you just hear, like, Gary just yelling at him, trying to work out where he was. But the terriers, they got them, the terrier, sorry, they thought specifically it would be good for rock stacks and things, to throw them up in the rock stacks and work different terrain. So, yeah, we got paired like that.
I think that's very funny. Just as a little side note, there was a paper that was released a few years ago looking at the concept of theory of mind, and they found that the only dogs that consistently had an understanding of the misbeliefs of humans were terriers. So I think Tama was onto something.
Yeah, I'll have to butt in here because I've got a lot of terriers. So, so you know, they are a very useful little dog. And I actually got Tama's sister from a different litter, Clay. She was my first terrier. Like you say, they're good for being thrown up on rock stacks and stuff. I had her working on Lord Howe Island, but it was for... we were checking the ship for rodents, that's what it was. And the ship comes in, the supply ship, and it's absolutely crammed with stuff. You can't even, it's absolutely crammed. You can't get, it's really hard to get into the hold. You've got to go down this narrow ladder. So I had her tucked under my arm because she's small enough for that. And then I let her go in the hold, and there's a gap of about 1/2 metre on top of all the stuff that's in the hold, and she just ran around in there in the dark. And I thought, if she goes down a crevasse between 2 pallets, I'll never find her. But she had the best time in there and did a very good rodent inspection. So, but they didn't want to send it. The spaniel's a heavier thing to carry, but they figured, oh, we've got Clay, she's small, she could go down there. So I've used her for that, amongst other things.
So Lynn, could you start us off in talking about what your dogs are working on at the moment?
Sure. So one of my dogs is Ash, who's actually the grandson of the dog that Mel was working with down in Macquarie Island, which is pretty cute, really. And he's also shy. So we've got a team of 4 dogs working. We've got 2 dogs who are retired. And Ash, who is a Springer Spaniel, and we have Mickey, who's a working Cocker Spaniel, and they're our 2 established dogs. So Mickey and Ash both work on a range of species. They're currently getting ready to work on Hastings River mouse, which is an endangered native mouse along the Great Dividing Range in New South Wales and Queensland. We also, then Ash finishes that job and then he switches over to the Croombit tinker frog, which is a critically endangered, tiny, tiny little frog from Croombit Tops, is one little part of a plateau in Queensland. He'll do that. And then Mickey is actually coming to Tasmania to work on a bird of prey mortality field data collection to help validate a model. And then he will come back down again in November and December to work on the orchids so with the Enviro-Dynamics crew. And in between all of that, we've got a bit of koala work on down the eastern seaboard of New South Wales. So we've got 2 new dogs who are a year old and one just turned 2, and they're both learning the trade and doing all of their base training at home with me at the moment, and we're looking at them in terms of what sort of personalities they are and who they are and how they enjoy working, as to work out which projects they'll back up the older dogs on.
Nick, do you want to tell us about what your dogs are working on?
Sure. So I have 3 dogs. I've got Zorro, who's my original Sprolly. There is a term in the military that your first dog is, and I can't actually say the word, but it's the dog that you basically learn all your lessons from. He is my lesson learning dog, but he is now fantastic. And he is working primarily at a wind farm, so he does bird and bat mortality monitoring. So we look for bird carcasses at a wind farm, but also we don't just look for the carcasses, we look for feather spots. So often, because there's quite a high level of predation, there won't actually be a bird to find by the time we get there. And so humans are notoriously bad at finding these things on wind farms. It's one of those very, very well studied areas because they're so heavily regulated. So we look to see what might have been hit at the wind farm. And Zorro obviously also worked when we were doing a research project with the Difficult Birds Research Group on masked owl pellets. So Tasmanian masked owls, as a lot of you know, are they're kind of elusive, they're nocturnal, they never return your calls, and it's pain looking for them in the dark. And so sometimes it's better to look for the traces they leave behind. So they throw up these little reject pellets, which are kind of like a cat fur ball, but with more skulls and bones in it. That is his other main target. He's also done a bit of work on fresh devil scat for DNA analysis. My second dog, Grommy, my angel, Border Collie because I decided that I did just really want a Border Collie. Grommy does bird and bat mortality monitoring. He also has serrated tussock as a recreational odour. When Mel was unwell, we trained him on tussock, so if she couldn't take Fonzie out for whatever reason, because he was quite big and she was not feeling very well, she would have been, it was possible that she could take Gromit because he's a lot easier to physically manage. He's a lot smaller and he's, Border Collie is very biddable. And my baby dog, Morello, she's a Border Collie as well, and she is going to be working mostly in wind farms, and we have a couple of other little projects. Something cool that we are working on is looking at live devil detection in dens. We've been chatting to the Zoos Victoria crew who do some really interesting research. They've got an entire detection dog program and they've done some really cool stuff with platypus in burrows. And obviously there are lots of circumstances where you would like to know if there is a devil in a den and you might not be able to work that out any other way. So that's something that we're kind of looking at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, my dogs are just being cute on the couch. That's all they like. Yeah. I have no working dogs, but no, Wags passed away. Actually, the dogs from Macquarie Island, they tried to Sue reworked a lot of them, but and Hamish, one of my dogs who left early, became the pin-up boy for Macquarie Island Pest Eradication Project. But no, I just have dogs like many of you that are just working on being cute. So I'll pass over to Sue.
He's very cute, Hamish.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. I've got 6 working dogs at the moment, and I've got a couple of retired ones. So all mine work on pest animals. I've got 2 that are working on. They do work on different things. So most of them are terriers, and these are the sort of New Zealand line fox border terrier crosses. And they've got long legs and lots of attitude, and they're scruffy, although I do have a couple of smooth ones now. And I've also got Belgian Shepherds and a Labrador. The Lab's retired. He worked on cats and cat scats. But I've got a Belgian Shepherd female who works on cats and cat scats, and she works for a ball reward to find a cat or a cat scat. I've also worked her on possums because there was an island that had possums introduced, or they may have introduced themselves, but we needed to get the possums off as well because they're quite predatory. So she also does that. But the terriers are mostly small animal. They do small animal work, rats, mice, and rabbits, and but also cats. So yeah, so they've got a variety of things, and it depends on the dog and the job. What you do. So I'm currently got 3 dogs working on rodents who do biosecurity work as well as their field work, and they're used for checking Macquarie Island cargo and also ship inspections prior to the ship leaving for Macquarie Island. So they do that. So I think recently I did a lot of time on Lord Howe Island. Helping out with at the end of the rodent eradication program. There were black rats and mice there. And then after the main knockdown of the eradication, it looked like it was at 0 for 18 months. And then there was like an eruption of rats, like right at that point. And that was basically terrifying because we nearly got to the 2-year mark and we thought we were clear. But rats appeared. And there were 2 dogs over there at the time, the ones that live there, and they were taken to the spot, like, yep, the rats were there. The locals are just amazing, and so one guy shot 2 rats, so that was his, the dog handler shot 2 rats, each one in a tree. That was pretty funny. Oh, goodness. And but anyway, it just went on from there. It did get a bit crazy, but we had a lot of dogs to come in at the time of that eruption of rodents, and so ended up spending quite a bit of time there. And that actually has been a highlight doing that work. The work the dogs did. If dogs hadn't been available, they would not have. That eradication would not have been successful. Yeah, they saved the island. Yeah. So that was pretty good. So yeah, so that one recently worked on a island in South Australia, also known as Flinders Island. That was for monitoring for cats, and so I came in after all the cats had been killed. They were never really sure whether you've got them all or not, but the dogs found 53 dead cats and lots of scats. That was great. That was 3 months last year. Prior to that, I worked on Dirk Hartog Island. I had 6 dogs over there. Same thing, doing monitoring after the main eradication. So that's often what I end up doing is monitoring work with dogs when there's a really low density of animals, and we use the dogs to find the remaining animals.
Yeah, we were really lucky to work on Lord Howe as well, and Lord Howe was brilliant because it was a really good collaboration of different dog teams and different styles of dogs for different parts of the jobs. So the spaniels were, really useful at some point, and the terriers were really, really useful at other points. And it was really that whole collegiate approach that actually made it a successful program, I think. Yeah, we worked with a working cocker, which was one of Steve's dogs, and we also took over our koala dog, who had a stint over there as a rodent dog as well. And yeah, he had a jolly good time.
Yeah. The dogs had a really, really fun time. There was a method developed over there called cordon and capture, and that was invented by the team. And so a dog would locate a rodent, and it would be in a big pile of thatch, or like palm thatch, because there's lots of this stuff that drops off the trees. But you don't want the dog to just dive in there and chase it away, because then you've got to catch it or find it again. So it's in there, and you've got to back off. And the dog's going, no, it's in there. And I was like, no, just don't panic. And then you'd call up, and then they'd bring the team in, and there was basically an emergency response for this rodent response. So there was, how many parks people? I don't know. There must have been 20 or 30 parks people from New South Wales over there at any one time, helping out with all sorts of jobs. And they'd all come barreling in, and they'd set up a bird netting net right around this big pile, and then weigh it all down. Everyone would be holding the net. The dog and the handler and a couple of people are in the middle, and they just take out one palm at a time until the pile goes all the way down. The dog's just getting more and more, it's in there. But so are the people, because it's just, and then finally the rat makes a run for it, and either somebody stamps on it or grabs it or pounces on it, or the dog gets it, but the dog gets it in the end. You're like, whatever, so he gets to carry it. But my dog Nui, he was just having a meltdown every time we were doing this cordon and capture. So that was a very fun technique that was invented over there.
I haven't spent as much time on Lord Howe as these two, but I did go over and help Sue and Nui at one stage, which was a fantastic experience. But it was really interesting talking to the locals on Lord Howe, because the rats just ate everything that was edible at ground level and then above ground level, because they can climb the trees. And some of the experienced wildlife people, I've never seen that thing flower, I've never seen fruit on it before. There are a whole bunch of species that were just not able to successfully reproduce because of the munching of the rats, and once they were gone, the ecosystem really recovered. So not just the flightless birds like the Lord Howe Island wood hens, but the plants as well. It made a massive difference. Really important project.
That's a really lovely segue into the next question, which is just wanting to talk about what is the most significant conservation outcomes you guys have seen from working with conservation dogs. And I would imagine that the Macquarie Island story would be one of them, because, from a plant point of view, I think 2 of the Macquarie Island plant species have recently been downlisted because of the removal of rabbits and the recovery afterwards. And some birds as well, yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Mel can talk about it. Yeah.
No, I think there's a couple of seabirds, I can't remember the species, but Jez Bird was working on them. They've also been, yeah.
Oh, grey petrel.
Yeah, you can talk about the birds. No, I mean, to answer your question, I mean, obviously I was down on Macquarie Island for a year, and we didn't know at the time, but Wags, so Hamish had to leave the island early because he had, it turned out he had a congenital knee problem, so he left the island to be the post boy, and I just had Wags, but this one morning, because the island's always covered in fog and it's really windy, it's really hard conditions, and I'd had my weekend on this plateau hut with the man who's currently still my partner, but I met him there. There was low rabbits, so I moved on to hunting males. No, no, so I was with Ben and I left this hut to go back to my hut for the week, and I just said, I don't even know if I know what a rabbit looks like anymore. It had been 4.5 months, and this was the hut where, hey?
But did you remember what
I remember what men looked like. I'd seen it the night before, so but this was the hut that you'd commonly leave, and if you didn't have your GPS on and it was in fog, you'd actually walk, and then you'd be like, what is that? And you'd realise you'd walked in a circle back to the hut, and because you couldn't see. So anyway, I walked down this hut, I'd said that to him, and then Wags's behaviour about an hour down on the plateau completely changed, and I was like, oh my God, he's on a rabbit. And we tracked all the way up to this mountain, and by this time, we were the first team, so I can't imagine the years after where there were no rabbits, but everyone was desperate to see a rabbit. So I called in everybody who was nearby in the nearby hunting blocks, and I said, "You got to come. There's a rabbit here." And so the whole team arrived, and he was messaging on this burrow, but there was burrows everywhere. But there's also a lot of burrowing seabirds, so it was always a complication there because you're like, are they hunting a rabbit or a seabird? They're not meant to, but are they? So it was always. You had to be careful, and the rabbits and the seabirds would often share burrows. So we started to dig this burrow. There was a bird, but he was still excited. And anyway, we found this rabbit, and when we got her, it was absolutely amazing. And of course, and we shared it with everyone. But then we found out she was lactating, so we knew there was babies nearby. And it took us a whole week with everybody circling this mountain in the middle of the plateau for a week. And Sandy King, who had Ash and Bondi, finally found the babies. And there's a picture of Bondi. He's got all his hair, he was a springer, all his hair is just dreadlocked with mud. And they dug this huge, complex labyrinth to find the nest at the bottom and 4 babies. And we didn't know at the time, but they were the last rabbits on the island. And and then I happened to end up doing a PhD and working the island a lot over the next 8 years or something. I went down there a lot, and the change was insane. So when I first saw the island, Keith Springer, who ran the project, we were like, oh, it's just amazing, look at this place. And he said, I'll never forget it, he said, it's nothing but a pretty paddock, like it's not meant to be this way. And there was all these exclosure plots which showed the vegetation that should be there. But having then gone down there for years afterwards, where you suddenly can't even walk around because the vegetation change is huge. And so my project following that, which is why I've ended up being an entomologist, is I did 3 years of surveying the whole island for invertebrates. And I did all different types of sampling, including naked sweep netting, just to make sure I wasn't missing anything. But I surveyed the island for years, and I'm still processing that data to see the change in the invertebrates and the ecosystems that have followed, and it's absolutely immense. So, yeah, that's what I was part of.
I think it's kind of interesting. On this panel, we have I think it's interesting. On this panel, we have 3 people who have been to Macquarie Island working at different stages of that eradication project. And I can look around and I can see a bunch of people who I know are scientists and other people who've worked on MACA. Can I just see a show of hands? Who here has worked on Macquarie Island? Okay, so you're going to back me up when I say that people who have not been there cannot understand what a difficult environment it is to work in. It's hard to move around. It's like, I can only imagine how difficult it would have been to be doing the early days work, manoeuvring dogs around that island. When I was down there, I was working with one of Sue's terriers, and we were doing cargo checks. So we weren't really, for the most part, it was cargo checks. So I wasn't dealing with the extremities of the environment, but I think it's a really astonishing example of what you can do with a targeted detection dog program for conservation. Such hard work, and the people who went down there, initially.
Without the dogs either.
It could not have been done without the dogs. That project, I guarantee, would fail without the dogs.
Yeah, so just taking on a slightly different spin then, the thing that I was going to talk about in terms of highlights of detection dog work is going back to the bristlebird work. I mean, the work that we do with our guys are all really, really cryptic. The numbers are really low, and with things like Hastings river mouse, there is nothing to see. So the handler is in the field and the dog indicates on something, and there is nothing for us to go, that's correct, there's no rabbit in the burrow, there's no physical evidence for the handlers. So you're completely relying on the veracity of the dog to be able to tell you that there's something there. And then if you're lucky, they put cameras on them or traps, and they might find something a week, 24 hours, maybe 3 weeks or 6 weeks post the dog detection to confirm what the dog already found you. And with the Hastings river mouse, we've actually, with the dogs, found new populations in Werrikimbe National Park that they previously hadn't been recorded at, and we're pursuing some more work in Barrington. But the Bristlebird program with Penny, when she was able to help us get eggs and chicks into the captive breeding program, was a really pivotal thing, because the work that she did was a narrow window of time, but she enabled that captive breeding program to then kickstart. And that was back in 2014 that we did all of that, started all of that work, and she worked on that for several years. But now that captive breeding program is still running, and they have now gone from 38 individual birds left in the wild to they've reintroduced up to 51 birds so far from the captive breeding program back into the wild, and they have confirmed breeding of those birds with wild birds in the wild. So it's a really nice example of a conservation program that is really, really working, and these birds are coming back into the landscape and they're really being productive back in the locations that they should be. And a lot of that really started because of a little Springer Spaniel.
Oh, you too. Excellent. So we've just got 5 minutes left, and I wanted to ask you all, so it's just a brief chat about what you think the future of working with conservation detection dogs, particularly given the compounding biodiversity crisis. You've got both microphones.
Oh, no, I've got both. I'm going to give one to Lynn.
All right. Look, I think from my point of view, what detection dogs bring to conservation is they see the world through their nose. And it's an environment that, as humans, we cannot do. And it doesn't matter which technology we use, drones or cameras or whatever, we're restricted to auditory and oral, and eyes, sorry. But dogs see the world completely differently. And so they open up a complete landscape of discovery and knowledge that we have no other access to apart from them. And I think that's probably one of the key things that they bring to us. They're not, as Magali said in the beginning, they're not a silver bullet for every project, but for things that are hard, low numbers, cryptic, just won't show themselves, won't jump in traps, won't do the things that we want them to do, bring on a dog.
Totally agree with Lynn. Something I was going to add, I don't know, I'm sure some of you are familiar with Ed Yong's work as a science writer, but he wrote a great book called An Immense World, looking at the way that animals perceive the world through senses that we don't have. And he talks about like the olfactory sense, using your nose, being a way that you can see through time. And so dogs, like their sense of smell is so strong that they can like find a line of footprints and be like, you were running that way because the odour is stronger at one end. And so they absolutely, what Lynn said, they're like able to find things that we can't find any other way. The way I like to think about it is dogs open doors, and I don't just mean the door to the toilet or the shower when you're trying to have a little bit of time alone. They open doors for us to like obtain data that we can't get any other way to allow us to make better conservation decisions, but also, as a fringe benefit, they open doors to conversations. I've been out with dog handlers on islands in New Zealand looking for invasive ants. And if you're walking around with a dog, member of the public will come up every like 10 minutes going, why is there a dog here? What's going on? And you can talk to them about threatened species or invasive species in a way you wouldn't be able to otherwise. Mel understood this, and she used Fonzie as a tool to talk to landholders about the importance of landscape management, and she got access into areas that she wouldn't have had access to in any other way. So I think dogs open doors that would otherwise be closed to us.
Yeah, I can't add much more to that. I mean, my following work from Macquarie Island is all about you know, looking at island biodiversity and eradications and the effect the eradications have on island biodiversity. And I think, as Sue's work does, it really, they're the really highly biodiverse places, and eradications are occurring increasingly all around the world with success. And dogs, it couldn't be done without the dogs that follow up, and this, the work that Sue does, basically.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with all that, and yes, like I said, I've been working with mine on islands, and you know, islands are some of the last. Islands are places that you can protect, that you can successfully protect, and dogs are one tool that have helped out on a lot of islands. Well, you see, there's just lots of islands.
And something Sue and I were talking about before, she pointed out to me, which I had not thought of recently, all islands are surrounded by water, so they can include mountaintops, and they can also, you know, metaphorically include like fenced sanctuaries, which we see in New Zealand a lot more than we do here, but also on the mainland of Australia. And islands come in a lot of sizes. Like, they don't support necessarily the diversity of environments, but then Tasmania is an island, and we have a great diversity of environments, and the work that's done by biosecurity dogs stopping things getting here in the first place cannot be understated. It's really important.
Yeah, and just in a last little plug, in the Tasmanian context, I think the work that Mickey's been shown that he can do on the leek orchids, it's an early stage project, and we did a proof of concept in November last year, but I think the orchid specialists were very surprised at his ability to find things. In particular, I think probably one of the highlights was the finding the seedlings hidden in the tussocks of these leek orchids that the orchid people hadn't seen.
Never seen.
Yeah. So really showing ways of finding things that are just outside scope and leading innovation, I guess, in terms of understanding. Yep. And I think that's probably us.
I think that means, ladies, we've had our time. It was very, very fun, and thank you so much. We have a little gift for each of you. Thank you. And can I get you to take yours and pass it on? I'm probably supposed to do that much more dignified, but thank you very much for your time from Enviro-Dynamics and TLC, but also from everybody in the audience. And I'll probably now pass on to Jessie for the next part after you guys give them a big round of applause. Thank you.
You can sit down if you want. Yeah. What a panel. I think just listening to the stories of these women and the projects that they've been working on and the diversity of projects and outcomes that they've seen. So many of us who work in the sector bring our own unique skill set to unique projects, and collectively we create incredible impact for the environment, just like these dogs are doing. So it takes many people in many different ways to see beautiful outcomes. I'm just here today for a little bit of a plug. Last year I mentioned that Women Environment Leadership Australia was bringing a leadership intensive to Tasmania for women and gender diverse people who are interested in learning a bit more about themselves and a bit more about showing up as brilliant leaders to take conservation to the next level. And once again, we are, TLC is very proud to partner with Weller to make this possible at Spring Bay Mill in 26th to the 29th of May. And if you are interested in spending 4 days with
20-odd women learning more about yourself and how you can show up. I strongly encourage you to apply. This is about finding resilience, finding strength in yourself, and fostering a deep trust and collaboration across our sector so that we can all, high tide rises all ships, and I strongly encourage you to be part of that tide. Really importantly, this program is not cheap to run, but it is heavily subsidised by philanthropy. So if you do go to apply, please note that those fees are already significantly reduced thanks to the support of so many people, including Spring Bay Mill, who are hosting us for the week. Applications close on the 13th of March, and if you have any questions, please come and see me and I can provide you with more information, but it's all on the web as well. So thank you very much.
I just found that an absolutely amazing story. The depth and the effort and the consequences of what has happened by working with dogs, and I know a reasonable amount about this, and I still was really amazed. So thank you so much to the panel for entertaining us, but also for sharing your stories. And I love the fact that the focus is so much on the reality of the partnership that you form with the dog and how dependent you are on the personalities, just like we are when we all work together. So fantastic and inspiring, such positive stories. So I just wanted to add my word to that, to say thank you so much, but also to note that I'm here to talk about Melanie Jane Kelly Bursary and to award this year's winner and runner-up prize. So to me, all I could think is how proud Mel would have been to hear that conversation, to see it being spoken about, to share the concepts and the ideas and the implications as they're rolling out through time. And I think particularly for the close connections that so many people in this space have, it was a really lovely thing. So really nice to have this theme. But I won't talk any more about that, but I just wanted to acknowledge how much she would have loved it and that she was such for me and for many others, she was a trailblazer. And so we established a bursary award to try to encourage other trailblazing women. We do have, unfortunately, Leah Sue, who was the first prize winner, is unable to make it because she's travelling. But she had an amazing project. But we have a short video that she has made for us about that. But one of the reasons we selected this is we were channeling a bit of Mel. It's a really lovely blend of community action, something that's a little bit inspirational, linked to some of the things we've talked about before in terms of artwork and how it connects to nature and science, and also a previous speaker that we've had speak here about ceramics and handfish, which was Jane, oh God, I'm going to forget now. Bamford, thank you. So Jane Bamford. So I would, if we could go to the video for...
Hi everyone, my name is Leah and I'm incredibly grateful and honoured to receive the 2026 Melanie Jane Kelly Bursary Award. My apologies for not being able to be there in person. I'd like to sincerely thank the committee and reviewers for their support in this research. This funding will allow us to continue building momentum in planting artificial spawning habitats for the critically endangered spotted handfish, while expanding targeted sea star removal to improve breeding success. By bringing together citizen scientists, local ceramicists, and scientific researchers, strengthening a collaborative approach will sustain long-term conservation impact. Thank you again, and congratulations to all the other awardees.
There was something we really struggled to make a decision, and so we decided to also award a runner-up prize. But luckily for us, Alexandria Bullen was able to make it. So I'd like to invite you to come up.
Thank you. Hi everyone. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to the committee, to the Risk Recovery Foundation and whatnot. I'm really honoured to receive this, and the money is going to really help out with some important research. So my background is I'm a veterinarian based on northwest coast of Tassie, and I do some population health research. And one of the things I've really been thinking about recently, as we learn more about just the whole ecosystem devastating impacts of rodenticides in our environments, is improved monitoring methods for our live animals. So as a veterinarian, we usually find rodenticide toxicities through post-mortem examinations, and most of the testing methodology at the moment is based off liver and those post-mortem samples. So through my work, where I study bandicoots predominantly the last few years, and I've just started a PhD looking at quoll health, I'm hoping to investigate methods of improving detection in our live wildlife so we can do more surveillance. And those methods specifically is looking for clotting times. So in small animals, all we do is take a drop of blood and look at how long the blood takes to clot, and that's how we determine if an animal is clinically affected. But those same test parameters don't exist for most of our marsupial species. There's only one published paper that looks at it in wallabies. So I'm going to use this to create some clotting reference intervals for bandicoots and quolls specifically. These two species, I think, have been probably not recognised enough in the literature. As we go through and learn more about rodenticides, we're really seeing how some of our non-traditional species like insects and skinks and things can bioaccumulate these. And we always think of our birds and our carnivorous birds as being affected, but I think we're missing links with animals that are insectivorous. So bandicoots fit that perfectly, and they can also access baits. And quolls, particularly our eastern quolls, are primarily insectivorous actually, and also eat a lot of reptiles like skinks, which are really good bioaccumulators of rodenticides because they don't get affected as easily. So I'd also like to use some of this to start looking at using fur as well as a proxy method for investigating rodenticide levels, so we can do some more surveillance in these animals.
Thank you so much. You can see why this was a very important project. I actually think, and I would encourage people to find ways to support you to do the work. I was really blown away. I had always thought ignorantly that I was thinking about raptors, I have to say. I was thinking about raptors. And then I was like, bandicoots, really? Oh my God. I had never. And the reality of the impact of rodenticides is something that we all are starting to understand, but there hasn't been a lot of change. So to see a project like this, which will hopefully bring more understanding to the space and hopefully more awareness, I thought it was a really exciting and good project. So good luck to you in your research, and hope to talk to you more. So I have the honour of wrapping us up for the evening. One of the things I wanted to acknowledge is all the work that goes into pulling it all together. Thank you so much to the TLC team for all the things they've put together, Georgie for a lot of the big picture coordination and organisation, and everyone else who supported that, and also to the Enviro-Dynamics team who've been finding their way through it, collecting enormous bunches of beautiful flowers for your viewing pleasure, but also, you know, just the time and effort that goes into it. So thank you to everyone who's been part of it. Thank you for all of you for coming, taking the time out of your days, your evenings, but also for supporting the event. We were so excited to move to a bigger venue and still sell out. Oh my God. Really exciting for us to think that there are so many people working for positive change. And I think what you saw tonight was really, really positive. It shows you that what is possible And I think sometimes it's particularly, the world's not looking very positive at the moment. So it's really nice to be able to reflect that together we can drive a momentum that brings positive change. And so many people in this room are change makers, and I don't even like that word, but I feel like it is true and real. And I would like to just congratulate you all on what you bring and to your acknowledgement of the need for conservation in space and for all the women leaders in this room and how much we need you. So thank you very much. After this, we will now go and maybe have another drink at the bar and have a chance to network, and that's what it's about. So we also ask that you fill in the survey form later, because we like to know what we're getting right, what we can improve. We're also open to ideas about future themes. So anything you can do, and please reach out. We're very happy to help bring everyone together and have a good conversation about where we go next and the exciting possibilities that we have. So thank you very much.